Hey, welcome to Diode Press. I'm Graham, and also welcome to the first of the Linocut Printmaking series. So there are really a ton of ways to make a linocut, and you can make them as complicated or as simple as you want. And so for example, like kind of a simple one is this Einstein print that I did a couple years ago, or this small flower print that I did. So both of these are pretty small blocks and pretty easy to carve and print. And so really like anything else, everyone has their own style and way they like to do things, carve a block, the tools they use. So this series is going to go through how I use the tools and how I make a print. But I really encourage you to get online and browse around and see all the different linocuts out there and the different techniques and kind of styles of making them. And so this series is going to start out going through kind of the tools and the materials you need to make a linocut. And then as we get into it, we'll create our image, carve our block, and then eventually we'll end up printing our final image to have a whole set of prints that we made. So this series is going to stick to kind of the basics of a linocut, kind of starting from scratch and going through the whole process. But if you've already done some printmaking, woodcuts or linocuts in the past, hopefully you'll pick up a tip or trick and it'll help you out as well. And if you have something to contribute, please leave them down in the comments down below. I'd really appreciate it. And let me know down there any feedback or questions, and I'd be happy to answer as we go. So this first video is going to cover the tools and some of the materials you need to make a linocut. But everyone has their favorite tools or the favorite medium they like to carve on. So I definitely encourage you to experiment, try different materials and see what you really like. Because there's some that I've tried that I just hate, and if that was my first one I ever used, I probably wouldn't like making a linocut. But there's other types that I've tried that I just fell in love with, and they're great to use. And so now let's talk about different kinds of linoleum and the types that I'm going to use in this video. Alright, so now let's have a look at linoleum blocks and kind of see the options we have to work with here. So we have a few different kinds. So first is just this regular unmounted linoleum. And so this is Jack Reason, easy to cut lino, and you can carve on both sides of it. And it's really pretty flexible and easy to work with. And I think this is probably my favorite one to use. Just because it's, it's pretty forgiving and it's just a great material. So next up here we have this. This is Speedball Gray, and this is a 3x4 block. And this is just mounted to a block of wood. And it's kind of, I think it's the same thickness. And this is a good linoleum as well, something you might want to look into. And there's also this clear material. And this is from Jack Reason as well. And this is great if you're, want to trace an image or trace on top of a drawing. You can put this down and draw right onto it. But the problem I've run into is it's kind of plasticky and doesn't carve very well. It kind of cuts through. You can cut out shapes nicely, but it doesn't carve nearly as nice as this Easy Cut Lino, the gray, or the mounted blocks. But I think for this project, I'm going to be using these larger blocks just so I can make my image a little bit bigger. And this is gray linoleum. This is from McLean's Printmaking. And it's mounted on this kind of thick board here. And it's nice when it's mounted because it keeps it nice and flat and easy to work with. And it's a nice, square shape so you can register all your different prints, your different layers of your prints if you're using multiple blocks. Which we're going to do in one of the last videos of this series. We'll look at making a multiple block print. So those are kind of the basic choices you have for linoleum, and there's tons of brands and different styles. So just kind of look around and try one you like and see what's your favorite. And so depending on how big of an image you're going to use, you'll have to kind of decide the size of the block you want to get and your budget. And definitely try some different materials, like I said, because some are better than others, and you might just have a preference for one over another. So now that we know which one I'm going to use for our project here, we can move on to talking about tools. And again, this is somewhere where everyone has their favorites and what they like, and it's kind of trial and error to find a set that you really like. And so I'll just show you some of the tools that I'm going to be using, kind of what's out there. You can pick and choose what you want to use. So over here are woodcut tools. So we're going to focus on the Linocut and woodcut tools over here. So these are the Dockyard micro tools, and I use these for, like I said, both Linocut and woodcuts. And they come in all different sizes and tip widths and shapes. So for example, this one is a small V gouge. And then there's also U gouges. So this is a 3mm U gouge. So you can see here it has the profile of it, just a small U shape. If you look at one of the bigger tools, you can see what that shape looks like here. So it's the same thing, it's just much smaller. Most of my prints are really small. I prefer to make smaller pieces, and that uses smaller tools. So those are the Dockyard micro tools that I'll be using. And then you can also get tools which are more like this. So these are from EC Lions. And these you hold kind of more in your hand like this. And they have all different sizes and shapes, and so this is kind of a bigger U gouge. You know, there's also this one does a really nice fine line. And so you can get like a whole set of these tools, and they're not too expensive. And so you can get like the Speedball, you know, plastic handle lino carving set. You know, you can do great work with that. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't need anything crazy. And so we'll just look at a piece of lino here and look at a couple of these tools, and you can see the different marks you can make with them. You know, so if I look at a bigger U-gouge like this one, and when you carve into your block, it takes out a pretty good swath of the material. You know, and that can be good for if you're taking out a big area of background or something like that. You know, you want a couple different choices for different size tools. You know, I do a lot with these Dockyard micro tools. They're very small, and you can really get in there and carve out really small little shapes. You know, if you're doing lettering or things like that. And you can see just by the linoleum that gets peeled up how small those are. And so you'll definitely want some U-gouges, which like that one, and you'll also want a V-gouge or a couple of V-gouges, or the plastic handle, you know, lino kit tool you get at the craft store. It usually has different bits that have different shapes to them. And so with the V-gouge, you can run that along your block. And this is a bigger V-gouge. It makes bigger lines. And so throughout the course of our print, you know, I'll end up probably only using 2 or 3 different tools as I go. You know, it's really just up to you how you want to make your work. You know, that one makes a nice kind of a square line that gets cut out. And in the later videos, we'll get into kind of how to hold the block and keep it from sliding around, and there's some different ways you can go about that. One of my favorites is to use a piece of this drawer liner. And you can buy this at most hardware stores, and it's for lining like your kitchen drawers. And it's kind of a rubbery material. You can put it on your work surface, and it really makes your block, you know, stick onto there. And so I'm just using a kind of a small sheet here, but they come in big rolls, and you just cut it down to whatever size you want to use. And in a later video, I also show you how to make a bench hook, which is a piece of wood where your block sits on it, on the edge of your desk, and it keeps the block from sliding away. Because you always want to make sure when you're carving, that you're carving away from your fingers, because you don't ever want the tool to slip. If you're holding it and it slips, you don't want to stab yourself. So you always want to be carving away from your fingers, and if you have something keeping the block from sliding, it makes it a lot easier. So next up, we want to talk about ink. And you really want to get proper printmaking ink when you're making a lino cut. You know, I've seen people try to use acrylic paint or different things, and it's probably much easier to start out with just regular lino cut ink, and then rather than trying to, use something else and just make it more difficult for yourself. And so there's really a couple different kinds that you can use. There's oil-based ink, which I'm going to be using in this series, or you can do more of the water-based inks. And it's really up to you. You can try them both. And there's really a ton of different brands out there and kind of different styles of ink. So you really just need to kind of play around and find one that you're happy with. And again, I'll have a list of all the materials that I use in this project, and you can kind of see what I'm using. So one thing I like to use whenever I'm doing kind of printmaking projects is I use this Skin Safer solution. And it's a barrier cream you put on your hands before you start using any ink or anything. And it just kind of makes it easier to clean off any ink off your skin. It kind of makes it not stain. And it's just kind of a cool product. Okay, back to ink. So I'll be using mainly this Portland Intense Black, and it's made by Gamblin. And as you can see here, I have kind of yellow, black, blue, white, red, and this sepia over here. And you can also get things like this that's a transparent base. And this is essentially a transparent ink that you can add a little bit of any of these inks to, and they'll make you do kind of translucent colors. So this other ink is Akua, and this is a carbon black Akua ink. And it says this is for etchings, relief, or collagraph printmaking. I've never used it for relief printmaking, but I might give it a try in this just to kind of see how it works out. But this is kind of nice because it cleans up with just soap and water, so you don't have to use any kind of chemicals or anything to clean it up. And so with the Akua ink, you can just use water and soap to clean up. But for the oil-based inks, I use this Terpenoid Natural, and it's a non-toxic, non-flammable oil paint cleaner. And most craft and hobby shops sell it. And it works great for cleaning up oil-based inks. I just put this on the palette and wipe it away, and it comes up great. So you're also going to need a palette to spread the ink out on and mix different colors and things like that. So I use a glass palette usually, but I also have one of these it's like a ceramic palette. And craft stores have this, or in the attachments to this, you'll also be able to find one of these. And then finally, you'll need an ink brayer to be able to roll out your ink. And these, they go, this one's like a $10 one, but you can really just start with the basic. Just get used to using it and making it print. In the future, you can upgrade and get, nicer brayers. So I think that's going to wrap it up for the tools and materials you're going to need to make your Linocut print. And one thing I left out was paper, and we'll get into paper in one of the later videos, because that's kind of a whole segment in itself. So you should start brainstorming ideas of what you want to make a print of. You know, maybe start doing some thumbnail sketches or kind of just make a list of things you like. Just kind of think of simple objects or simple scenery, and we'll just do something really basic for this series, just so you get the idea of how to make a print. And then kind of once you get the basics down, then you can go nuts and make something really elaborate and as big as you want. But I would start kind of small for now. And then the next video, we'll get into, you know, kind of drawing our image and transferring it onto the block and moving on to the next steps. So make sure if you like the video to hit the like button, leave any questions or comments down below. I'd be happy to answer if you have any tips or tricks or favorite tools you like to use, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the videos when they're posted, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you want to help support this channel, you can check out the Diode Press Patreon page, where I post behind the scenes photos as well as other patron rewards. Thanks!